What actually goes on at Area 51? There are two competing narratives. There are accounts pieced together from declassified or leaked government documents that, when woven together, amount to the closest thing we have to an official story. And then there's the conspiracy-laden, primarily extraterrestrial-based, fascinating UFO lore. According to declassified CIA information, Area 51 was used to test nuclear weapons on U.S. soil and also to develop spy planes for the CIA and the Air Force during the Cold War. By the early 1950s, U.S. planes had begun conducting low-flying recon missions over the USSR, but there were constant worries of them being spotted and shot down. So in 1954, President Eisenhower authorized the development of a top-secret, high-altitude recon aircraft dubbed Project Aquatone. The program required a remote location that wasn't easily accessible to civilians or spies. Area 51 was created in the Nevada desert due to its being one of the most remote regions in the continental United States. Then, in the summer of 1955, sightings of unidentified flying objects were reported around Area 51. Again, according to the official, albeit leaked story, these sightings occurred because the Air Force had begun testing the top-secret U-2 high-altitude spy plane. The U-2 could fly higher than 60,000 feet, up to 70,000 feet, roughly, compared to the most normal airliners at that time, flying in the 10 to 20,000 feet range. Most of the nation's commercial flights topped out at 12,000 feet. Military aircraft were maxing out around 40,000 feet, and almost no one in the world knew this plane existed. So if a pilot spotted a tiny speck moving high above them at what they thought was an impossible altitude, of course they would not be able to identify it, and it would be logical to assume it might be extraterrestrial. Same for any, Tom, Dick, or Chikatilo on the ground. Just, why you at me to beginning of this episode? Why Chikatilo spotting UFOs now? Well, I guess at least do not make a joke of South Shamcock. And after those first U-2 flights, the UFO sightings around Area 51 started pouring in. Explains it, doesn't it? Not for some. Some think, how convenient. What better way to cover up hiding actual alien technology or aliens themselves? Release a smokescreen. Release previously unknown and advanced flight technology to hide other flight technology that's far more advanced because it's not from this world. And that leads us to the second narrative. Has the government been hiding proof of extraterrestrials at Area 51, possibly even working with them or working for them? Cue X-Files theme music now. Well, one former Area 51 employee, supposed employee, claims to have been tasked with reverse engineering the anti-gravitational technology of UFOs to incorporate it into military aircraft. Claims were made that alien beings have been spotted at Roswell and Area 51, and that briefing documents were read describing historical involvement by extraterrestrial beings from the binary star system Zeta Reticuli with Earth for the past 10,000 years. Probably the damn space lizards, man. There have been claims that alien wreckage from Roswell was brought to Area 51, as you heard about in the Alien Extravaganza Suck back in February of 2017. And we're going to take a fun look into all of this today. Do our best to separate fact from pure speculation in today's highly entertaining deep dive into the conspiracy lover's wet dream known as Area 51, today on Timesuck.
You're listening to Timesuck.
Happy Monday, Time Suckers. Happy new week, Meat Sacks. Work can wait. It's time for Timesuck. I'm the Master Sucker, president of the Pootie and Juju fan club, sadist who tortured with Michael motherfucking McDonald, Triple M. I keep forgetting we're not in love anymore. I keep forgetting things will never be the same again. I keep forgetting how you made it so clear. I keep forgetting every time you're near. Every time I see you smile. Yes, I'm Dan Cummins, and you're listening to Timesuck. And I'm recording today from a hotel in Tampa, Florida. So the people around me, very happy to be Triple M this morning, I'm sure. And that's why today's episode is going to sound a little different. Different mic, different room with very shitty acoustics. The sound's bouncing all around, and I just can't figure out how to stop it. And my voice is a little shot from show. So apologies for the things I can't control, but welcome to the cult of the curious. And hopefully, Reverend Dr. Joe Paisley will be able to clean this up quite a bit from how I hear it right now in my headphones. Thanks to the majority of you who seem to understand my decision to, do one more Friday's bonus episode and then suspend further Friday bonus episodes, possibly forever. I know others of you are pissed and feel betrayed. I get the emails, I see the reviews. For those of you undecided about how you feel, I'll just say again that, when I made the reviews for the bonus episodes deal, the episodes they didn't take nearly as long to create because all episodes were shorter and honestly not as thoroughly researched and produced. Like if I would have kept the episodes at the original length, kept the research time originally what it was, more minimal, I could do bonus episodes every week and spend less time overall on the suck than I do now. It isn't about trying to back out of a deal. It's about the context around the original deal changing substantially. And it's suddenly making the deal virtually impossible to carry out. That's part of why I'm recording in a hotel room today, because I didn't have time to do this episode because I had to do the other episode back in the Suck Dungeon. So thanks to those of you who do understand. And very grateful for all the reviews and ratings you've been still giving. And I did do 25 bonus sucks because of those reviews and ratings. They do mean a lot to me. Thanks for those of you who continue to do that. Thanks for continuing to spread the suck. Huge thanks. Okay, shifting gears very quickly to a little bit of stand-up. Thanks to the Timesuckers who came out to the Tampa shows. Man, very, very happy. I did Thursday, let's see, 6 shows. One was sold out. A couple were very close to being sold out, and the other ones had a solid crowd. I mean, over 1,000, Timesuckers came out in Tampa. It's fan-fucking-tastic. Heading back to Florida this week. Shows at the Palm Beach Improv Friday through Sunday, August 10th through 12th. A little nervous about those ones. I've not done South Florida much because traditionally, not many people have showed up in those markets. So maybe things have changed. We'll find out. And then on to Zanies in Chicago, August 15th through the 18th. Westward after that to Denver, Comedy Works, 23rd through 25th. And then that new live Timesuck on the Narco Satanists on Sunday the 26th. Getting fucking crazy. New merch hitting the store today. A new second generation hat for everyone and a bunch of new shit for Space Lizards only. Bunch of Space Lizard merch. I'll go into more detail on that in Thursday's Secret Suck about, what's in store literally for the lizards. Some cool cultish Danger Brain design tank tops, shirts, new stickers. A lot of it glows in the dark. Reminds me of clothes I was into in high school in the best way. And I have a giant fucking bridge troll of a head. And it took me years to find a hat that fit me perfectly, but wasn't so big it would look weird on humans with not, watermelon-sized crazy monster heads. So I finally found a hat in Cleveland last year that I've come to love just because it's so comfortable. I think it's cool looking, and I told Access Apparel, our new distributor, that I wanted that exact same hat to be made into a Timesuck hat so I could actually wear it proudly. I mean, sadly, the first generation Timesuck hat, some people are like, why don't you wear it? Because it fucking hurts. It fits 95% of humans, but not me. I'm just outside that range head size. And of course, the one I had to find was the most expensive hat out there. And so I assure you, even though we're charging a few dollars more than the previous hat, we actually make less money on the hats. But I don't care because it's my favorite fucking hat of any hat I've ever worn in my life. It's 70% acrylic, 30% wool, 700% imported possum dick fur, 300% domestic bald eagle butthole. This is what gives it maximum quality and durability. And it looks dope, man. It has inner kind of a Cult of the Curious stitching, custom label, Danger Brain print and repeat, under brim pattern. And we won't be doing another baseball hat for a long time. And, won't be able to afford printing a big bunch of hats like this for a while again. So I hope you like it as much as I do. And then when it comes to hats, we'll take a break from the baseball hats. I know some of you want a different style, and we are working on that right now. Okay, so enough shilling, enough business. Time for fun. Time to suck on some of that sweet Area 51 sauce. As I stated earlier, 2 main narratives with Area 51. Is Area 51 a secret weapon testing facility or a hotbed of extraterrestrial activity? So let's start today taking a good look at option 1. Almost everything we know about Area 51 comes from a few declassified documents, the 2 biggest being released in 1998, 2007. In the declassified documents, the name Area 51 almost always redacted or blacked out. Only 2 known exceptions, most likely mistakes. What is confirmed is that Area 51 was used to test nuclear weapons on U.S. soil, well, in the area around Area 51, and used to develop spy planes for the CIA and the Air Force during the Cold War. It gets a little complicated with the terminology, like Area 51, because as you'll see, we'll get into it here, it's part of just a large military complex of sites with various names that are all kind of out there in the same group of land in the Nevada desert. Area 51 being, one little parcel on a much larger testing facility site. The facility contains the largest amount of weapons-grade plutonium and uranium in the U.S., not secured inside a nuclear laboratory. So now let's really get into the history of the Area 51 secret weapons development and testing program with today's Timesuck timeline.
Strap on those boots, soldier. We're marching down a Timesuck timeline.
All right, we start back in 1941, back before Area 51 was ever a thought in anyone's head. To understand how black top-secret projects began and how they continue to function today, one must start with the creation of the atomic bomb. The men who ran the Manhattan Project wrote the rules about black operations. The atomic bomb was the mother of all black projects, and it is the parent from which all black operations have sprung since. And it began on December 6, 1941, when FDR authorized the Manhattan Engineering District for the purpose of creating an atomic bomb. It would later be called the Manhattan Project. On December 6, the 1941, Colonel Leslie Groves is placed in charge of the Manhattan Project. J. Robert Oppenheimer becomes the project's scientific director. Now, Colonel Groves is the man who also designed the Pentagon. He directed the enormous construction effort that went into Manhattan Project's pre-Area 51 facilities, made critical decisions on the various methods of isotope separation, acquired raw materials, directed the collection of military intelligence on the German nuclear energy project, and helped select the cities in Japan that were chosen as targets. Paul Newman played him in the 1989 Fat Man and Little Boy movie that reenacts the Manhattan Project. And that's a whole nother suck, the Manhattan Project. J. Robert Oppenheimer was the American theoretical physicist and professor of physics at the University of California, Berkeley. Oppenheimer was the wartime head of the Los Alamos Laboratory in New Mexico and is among those who are credited with being the fathers of the atomic bomb for their role in the Manhattan Project. Dwight Schultz, a.k.a. Murdoch from the A-Team, old series, plays Oppenheimer in Fat Man and Little Boy. And these two guys were crucial to the development of the atomic bombs dropped at Nagasaki and Hiroshima, the bombs that would inspire Oppenheimer to quote ancient Hindu scripture and say, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." On July 16, 1945, the atomic bomb is tested inside the White Sands Proving Ground in the New Mexico high desert, just over 100 miles west of America's butthole, Roswell, New Mexico. Now, interesting trivia, the first atomic bomb's price tag, factoring in the research and infrastructure created that went into completing it, adjusted for inflation, $28 billion. Yeah, very, very expensive weapon. By 1945, the Manhattan Project had 80 offices and dozens of production plants spread out all over the country, including a 60,000-acre facility in rural Tennessee outside of Knoxville, a town called Oak Ridge, that pulled more power off the nation's electrical grid than New York City did on any given night. Roughly 30,000 people live in Oak Ridge today, and it wasn't even officially incorporated into a town until 1959. The Manhattan Project essentially created this town, the government still being the town's primary employer. August 1945, atomic bomb is dropped on Hiroshima on August 6th. Another one on Nagasaki, August 9th. Over 129,000 Japanese soldiers and civilians are killed in the first and last nuclear weapons strike in U.S. warfare history. Japan announces its surrender on August 15th. August 1st, 1946, the Atomic Energy Act is signed into law by President Harry S. Truman. After signing it, a presidential aide heard Truman whisper, kill him all. And then the president stared off into the middle distance and muttered, "I am the God of light, and I will bring my thunder down against any who oppose my will." And then he cried softly for a bit, and then he complained of feeling lightheaded, lied down for a while and took a nap. No, he only signed the bill. I have no proof of that other shit. It was the Atomic Energy Act with the Atomic Energy Act that the designation "born classified" came to be, and it was the Atomic Energy Commission that would oversee the building of 70,000 nuclear bombs in 65 different cities, 65 different sizes and styles. The Atomic Energy Commission would be the first entity to control Area 51, and it would do so with unprecedented power. And let's explain this notion of born classified real quick. For history buffs out there, the first law passed in the U.S. officially criminalizing letting an enemy know about sensitive military information was the Defense Secrets Act of 1911. It criminalized obtaining or delivering information respecting the national defense to which he is not lawfully entitled. Then in 1917, the Espionage Act was passed shortly after U.S. entry into World War I, basically just imposed stiffer penalties than the 1911 Act, such as the death penalty for revealing sensitive information. But not letting the enemy know about sensitive military information is different than officially keeping secrets from not only the enemy, but also the U.S. public and many in the government itself. The notion of born classified or born secret introduced in the Atomic Energy Act was new. Information can now be classified from the moment of its inception. Info could be and was deemed classified without having to be formally evaluated by any governmental oversight kind of agency or committee. They could create whatever they felt was important to create under the general instruction of build whatever you need to build to fuck Russia up if World War III breaks out. No Senate committee is going to be peeking over your shoulder. No oversight at all. Just get it done. Do whatever you need to do to create bigger and badder weapons than the Soviets. January 1st, 1947, the Atomic Energy Commission takes over the assets of the Manhattan Project, which ceased to exist under that name on December 31st, 1946. And this newly formed clandestine operation almost immediately starts doing some real shady shit. In a 1949 operation called the Green Run, the Atomic Energy Commission released radioactive iodine-131 and xenon-133 to the atmosphere, which contained which contaminated a 500,000 acre area containing 3 small towns near the Hanford site in southern Washington. That's actually southeastern Washington, not far from where I am, really. Kind of fucked up to pump radioactive elements into the air over towns full of people who have no idea what's happening to them. Then in 1953, the AEC ran several studies on the health effects of radioactive iodine in newborns and pregnant women at the University of Iowa. Arguably much more fucked up. Who should we test the effects of radioactive material on? Stuff we know for sure is very dangerous based on all the testing that led up to the atomic bombs. I don't know. Pregnant women and babies would probably be the most evil. You're right, Walter. That would be the most evil. I was thinking puppies and kittens, but babies would be the worst. So let's do that. Also in 1953, the AEC sponsored a study to discover if radioactive iodine affected premature babies differently than full-term babies. Even more fucked up. Hey guys, I'm really struggling with figuring out how to do something more evil than performing radioactive tests on newborn babies. Any ideas? How about preemies? How about premature, fragile newborn babies already likely suffering from a variety of medical problems that'll make it harder for them to live until adulthood, even if we don't fuck with them? How about we start throwing some radiation on the preemies? God damn it, Walter, that right there. That's why we hired you. Great job. Preemies is absolutely the worst group of humans we could possibly experiment on. God, my dick is so hard right now. I just can't wait to get started. In the experiment, researchers from Harper Hospital in Detroit orally administered iodine-131 to 65 premature and full-term infants. In another AEC study, researchers at the University of Nebraska College of Medicine fed iodine-131 to 28 healthy infants through a gastric tube to test the concentration of iodine in the infant's thyroid gland. So, slightly less evil, I guess. At least they're giving radiation to otherwise healthy babies. And who's running this program? Vannevar Bush, no relation to George W. Bush. President Roosevelt had appointed Vannevar Bush to lead the group that would create the Manhattan Project to make the bomb before World War II. Bush would head the OSRD, the Office of Scientific Research and Development, created in 1941, the office that oversaw the creation of the Manhattan Project. Bush was a brilliant engineer, inventor, and science administrator, graduating from Tufts University in 1914 and MIT in 1916. And to be clear, he doesn't appear to be someone who got off on just, being evil, I know I can get a little cartoonish on some of these things. He was a highly intelligent, ends justify the means kind of guy. And in the grand scheme of things, that was probably the mentality the U.S. needed to win the war, needed to win World War II. I mean, I joke around a lot, but I do realize that for the greater good, sacrifices have to be made. Possibly, I don't know, baby sacrifices. As monstrous as that sounds, I don't know that for sure, but maybe I'm open to the possibility. I mean, I'm not some bleeding heart, irrational, extreme liberal who thinks that wars, just never need to be fought, or that when they do need to be fought, that there's no excuse not to play nice, that you should never play dirty. I mean, in my opinion, that type of thinking is ridiculously childish and naive. Sometimes the end does justify the means. Sometimes, winning the war just prevents the most atrocity overall. And sometimes you got to do some shady shit to get there. The OSRD dissolved after the war. Following the war, Bush helped create the Joint Research and Development Board of the Army and Navy, of which he was the chairman. And then with the passage of the National Security Act of 1947, that culture-altering act we've talked about many times in the Suck, man. This is the act that created the CIA, created other controversial agencies, led to stuff like MK Ultra. With its passage, the JRDB becomes the Research and Development Board, which then quickly morphs into the National Science Foundation. And the role of this agency was to hire and oversee some of the nation's best scientific minds and give them as much money and support as they needed to create the most powerful weapons they could possibly create. They were operating in secret with essentially an unlimited budget. Just some Cold War shit, man. Bojangles growls and his hair bristles every time I say it. And Triple M grabs his gun, as does sweet baby-faced James Ingram, Grammy winner. All three prepared to fight communists at a moment's notice. And Vannevar Bush was a dude who was very concerned with the Ruskies, man. Very worried about communism and its spread. Very Cold War. Very worried about Stalin. For 18 days after the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Bush had monitored the movements of Joseph Stalin's army as he marched Soviet troops into Eastern Asia, positioning his Red Army forces in China, Manchuria, Sakhalin Island, North Korea. When the fighting finally stopped, Bush knew he had to convince President Truman that the Soviet Union could not be trusted, and then he did just that. He felt that the U.S. needed even more advanced technologies to fight future wars. And following World War II, Vannevar Bush and members of the War Department began planning to use the atomic bomb. Before Area 51 was established, the U.S. government tested their new nuclear post-World War II weapons technology at Bikini Atoll in the Marshall Islands. Tests would go on there from 1946 through 1958. Random trivia, the swimsuit, the bikini, the swimsuit known as the bikini, that entire style is named after this little cluster of islands. On July 5th, 1946, just 4 days after the first nuclear device, nicknamed Able, was detonated over the Bikini Atoll, Louis Réard, I guess, a French automobile and clothing designer, introduced a new swimsuit design named the bikini after the atoll. Réard was a French mechanical engineer by training and manager of his mother's lingerie shop in Paris. He introduced the new garment to the media and the public on July 5th, 1946, at a public school in Paris. How awkward to run a lingerie shop with your mom, by the way. Hey, Mom, what do you think about cutting back on G-strings and doubling down on crotchless panties? Which one do you like the most, Mother? Which one, when you put it on, gets Dad's dick the hardest? I mean, I doubt they had those conversations, but still weird. Also, before testing began in 1946, roughly 150 people lived on the Bikini Atoll and were forced to relocate. So that's a little messed up. In 1968, they were allowed to move back. Then scientists realized it was still very radioactive and they had to move out again. And then beginning in 1975, they were given millions of dollars in compensation for the whole, having their homeland obliterated with nuclear weapons. And again, how can I know? I'm probably saying the word nuclear with the incorrect pronunciation, but goddamn it, I got a little bit of an accent. It's just my own accent, so just fucking lay off. The government eventually realized Bikini Atoll was too public of a workspace. The government wanted to find an area on U.S. soil to do a nuclear testing away from Soviet eyes. This led to the Nevada test site and then to Area 51. Just, yeah, buddy. Now we're getting into the birth of the conspiracy theorist boner generator known as Area 51. Also the name of a video game I used to play so much at the good old Bulldog Tavern back in Spokane, Washington. My favorite bar back in the Gonzaga days. No longer there, man. Rest in peace, Bulldog Tavern. I miss shooting those damn aliens in their stupid faces. Air Force Colonel Richard Foghorn Leghorn has been watching the test of Bikini Atoll and realizes the world cannot afford a nuclear war. His middle name wasn't actually Foghorn, but his last name really was Leghorn. You remember Foghorn Leghorn? My God, I love that cartoon as a kid, man. He was a big rooster from the Warner Brothers, like Looney Tunes cartoons. First popped up in 1946. That's a joke, I say. That's a joke, son. Remember him and sassy little Henry Hawk used to pal around? Good times, man. Go, I say. Go away, boy. You bother me. Kid don't quit talking as much as he'll get his tongue sunburned, I say. That's a joke, I say. Any hoozle, Colonel Leghorn, not Foghorn Leghorn, believed that if the United States could fly secret reconnaissance missions over Russia's enormous landmass and photograph its military installations, the nation could stay ahead of the Russians in the Cold War nuclear weapons race. His idea was to create a state-of-the-art spy plane that could fly higher than the enemy's fighter jets could climb, higher than their anti-aircraft missiles could travel. And then Leghorn committed himself to developing a new philosophy of spying on the enemy from above, a concept that would come to be known as aerial espionage. In 1950, a top-secret feasibility study named Project Nutmeg. Fucking names they come up with sometimes. Really? That's the best? Nutmeg? Well, what's the name for our super cool project? We're going to think about Nutmeg or maybe Periwinkle. Perhaps maybe Basil? Project Basil? Anyway, this Project Nutmeg determined for President Truman that a huge area in southern Nevada, one of the least populated areas in the nation, not situated on a coastline in the continental U.S., was the most ideal place in the continental U.S. to test nuclear weapons. The Nevada test and training range quickly became 4,687 square miles of government-controlled land. In 1951, the economist who was running the financial office over at the Marshall Plan, Richard Bissell, was approached by Frank Wisner, the head of the CIA's OPC, the Office of Policy Coordination that funded covert missions, who asked him to help finance building a clandestine weapons testing facility in the Nevada desert that would morph into Area 51. 1954, James Killian, former president of MIT, co-director of the wartime operation of MIT, recruited the same Richard Bissell, placed him in charge of one of the most ambitious, most secret programs in CIA history, the U-2 spy plane program, developed under the code name of Project Aquatone. Old Dickie B, man. Dickie B's in charge, boys and girls. Dick Bizzle. Dick Biz. Who's in charge of the spy planes? Dick Biz. Dickie B to the is to the izzle. Richard Bizzle and his fellow CIA officer Herbert Miller, the agency's leading expert on Soviet nuclear weapons, flew across the American West in an unmarked Beechcraft V-35 Bonanza in 1955 in search of a location where they could build a secret CIA test facility, the only one of its kind on American soil. And Bizzle was very aware of that Groom Lake, big dry lake bed, was just over the hill from the government's atomic bomb testing facility, that Nevada test and training range that they already knew was the most remote place. So it meant, as far as the agency was concerned, as far as secrecy goes, no better place in the continental U.S. for the CIA to set up a new spy plane program and begin their clandestine work, So 4 months after Dickie B and Herbert Miller touched down on Groom Lake, Area 51 has its first residents. The agency's briefed about Area 51 at the start of the U-2 spy plane project, where the CIA, U.S. Air Force, National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, NACA, it was the forerunner to NASA, the Navy, the National Photographic Interpretation Center, the center that would analyze the photos the U-2 would take during its missions. And now, mofos, we are into the actual construction of Area 51 on the grounds of the Nevada Test and Training Range. Or, adjoining the grounds. It's all part of this huge complex. It's all part of this, all of these things are part of this Nellis Air Force Base complex. It's not attached to the base, but Nellis, Area 51, the test and training range, they're all out in the same area. All part of the same group of Southern Nevada military kind of desert land. Originally, the base consisted of one airplane hangar and a handful of tents called hooches, constructed out of wooden platforms, covered in canvas tops. Sometimes when the winds got rough, the tents would blow away. It took another month for halfway decent showers to be built on the base. The men could have been at an army outpost in Egypt or India as far as the amenities were concerned, but Area 51 was as much Washington, D.C. as it was Wild West. And plans began to build some spy planes in the same area nuclear weapons were now going to be tested. And the U-2 would be the first of these planes, a top-secret airplane built on the covert orders of President Eisenhower. Its 1955 budget was $22 million, which would be $180 million, or actually over $180 million in today's dollars. There's $180 million in 2011 dollars. And soon, young pilots are running test flights around the Nevada desert. Flight speed and altitude records are being secretly broken by the day, basically. Flight test mechanic Bob Murphy would later state, "There was absolutely no government meddling, which enabled us to get the job done." There was only one man with any kind of serious oversight at Area 51, and that was, Richard Bizzle, man, Dickie Bizzle. DB, baby, Dick Biz. Dickie B felt that the U-2 was the agency's best chance to get hard intelligence on the Soviet Union, considering that one photograph could provide the agency with as much intel as approximately 10,000 spies down on the ground. President Eisenhower put the CIA in charge of the overhead reconnaissance because, as he later wrote, the aerial reconnaissance program needed to be handled in an unconventional way. What that meant was that President Eisenhower wanted the program to be black, wanted it to be hidden from Congress and from everyone but a select few who needed to know about it. He also wanted the U-2 to be piloted by a man who didn't even wear a uniform. If a plane were to crash, he didn't want anyone to know, where it came from. On November 16, 1955, the U-2 gets assigned its first mission. A personnel transport flight carrying Area 51 employees crashes just south of Area 51 and just north of Las Vegas into the granite peak of Mount Charleston during a blizzard, killing everyone on board. And old Dickie B, old Bizzle, B Nizzle, had U-2s dispatched from Area 51 to help pinpoint the exact location of the Air Force airplane, an impromptu and unorthodox first mission triggered by tragic circumstances. The Las Vegas Review-Journal reported that the crash was being kept secret because the men on board were likely nuclear scientists working on top-secret weapons project at the Nevada test site. And then after they report that, no more reports. The reporters then suddenly stop asking questions, probably after being contacted by the CIA. The truth about the crash at Mount Charleston, the single biggest loss of life for the U-2 program, would remain hidden from the public until the CIA finally acknowledges the plane crash in 2002. Well, as far as UFO lore goes, this is very interesting to me. As soon as the U-2s started flying out of Area 51 in 1955, beginning with that, that first mission, reports of UFO sightings by commercial airline pilots and air traffic controllers began to inundate CIA headquarters. Later painted black to blend in with the sky, the U-2s at the time were silver, which meant that their long, shiny wings reflected light down from the upper atmosphere in a way that led citizens all over California, Nevada, and Utah to think that these planes were UFOs. Like, of course they would think that. Like again, as we said in the beginning, the altitude of the U-2 alone was enough to bewilder people. Commercial airplanes flew, between 10 and 20,000 feet in the mid-1950s, usually around 12,000 feet, where the U-2 could fly as high as 70,000 feet. It's this little metallic speck way, way, way up in the air, way past where anybody assumes anything is able to even fly. And the modern day UFO craze officially began, as you guys know, if you've been listening to all the sucks, on June 24th, 1947. This is a quick refresher on UFO lore that we examined in depth in both the Men in Black suck, and the old bonus alien extravaganza suck. Just to establish that by 1955, UFO mythology was heavily ingrained into American culture. Because again, back in 1947, that search and rescue pilot, Kenneth Arnold, spotted 9 flying discs speeding over Washington State, or so he claims, while he was out, searching for a downed airplane. And then approximately 2 weeks later, the crash at Roswell occurred. People are losing their minds. People are suddenly spotting, UFOs all over the place. Newspapers are reporting across the country. The U.S. is demanding answers from the military. According to a CIA study on UFOs declassified in 1997, the Air Force had originally been running 2 programs to look into UFO sightings, and we've talked about these before. One was covert, initially called Project Saucer, later called Project Sign. Another was an overt Air Force public relations campaign called Project Grudge. And the point of Project Grudge was to persuade the public that UFOs constituted nothing unusual or extraordinary. And to do this, the Air Force, had to go on TV and radio dismissing UFO reports. Were they hiding real reports of actual sightings, though? Well, I don't know. We'll get into that later in this episode. So 1956, meanwhile, across the world, the Russians are busy working on their own spy shit at their equivalent to Area 51. If Area 51 had a communist doppelganger, it was a remote top-secret facility 40 miles northeast of Moscow called N11-88, a weapons, rocket, and spacecraft center. Soviet scientist Sergei Korolev was working on a project that would soon shame American military science and propel the arms and space race into a sprint. In 1956, all the CIA knew of N11-88 was that it was the place where Russia had kept dozens of its captured German scientists toiling away on secret science projects. Working in this facility were roughly 400 German rocket scientists who had been working there for over a decade since they'd been captured in World War II. President Eisenhower tells Russia in 1956 that the U.S. will no longer fly spy planes over Russian airspace and is lying his ass off when he says this. It's not true. U-2 planes would start flying missions. And at the time, the U.S. believes their new Area 51 toy is invisible to Russian radar, so they feel very comfortable with this lie. Well, on July 3rd, 1956, old D. Bizzle, Area 51 director, gives the signal to start the first U-2 flight across Russian airspace. Pilot Hervey Stockman took off in a U-2 from Wiesbaden, Germany, a little after 6 a.m. In the U-2's camera bay, Stockholm transported a 500-pound Hikon camera fitted with the most advanced photo lens ever devised in America up until that point. He says, I was supposed to turn the cameras on when I reached Leningrad. I was to fly along photographing the naval installations that there, as well as a couple of airfields that were all part of what we had been led to believe might hold long-range Soviet bombers. But there were no long-range bombers to be found. The famous bomber gap, it turned out, was false. Well, Stockman's photos made the CIA ecstatic. They were ecstatic to justify the entire U-2 program as a flurry of top-secret memos dated July 17, 1956 revealed. One agent wrote, for the first time, we are really able to say that we have an understanding of what is going on in the Soviet Union. However, despite Bizzle's assurances to the contrary, the U-2s were tracked by the Soviets' air defense warning systems from the moment they flew over the country. They hit those radar screens. Once the film from Stockman's flight was developed, CIA photo interpreters determined that the Soviets, had attempted more than 20 interceptions of Stockman's mission. When Khrushchev learned that Eisenhower and the Americans had betrayed him, he was furious. And Eisenhower didn't give a single fuck. His new toy was traceable, but untouchable. The land-based Soviet surface-to-air missiles could not get a shot up high enough to knock this airplane out of the sky. America's spy plane had flown over Russia with impunity. And if the fact became known, the Soviet Union is just going to look weak. So the Soviets aren't going to say anything about this. They just have to kind of sit back and take it. However, after a few more missions, Eisenhower does order the CIA to stop all flights, these big, flights over the Soviet Union until further notice. They'd seen what he wanted to. They got the intel they wanted, and he didn't feel like there was any need to continue to rile the Russians. Well, back at Area 51, Dickie B is now worried that Eisenhower is going to shut down his program. They've ceased aerial surveillance missions, and concerned that his program is going to be shut down by the president, he hires a team to analyze the probability of a Soviet shoot down of the U-2. And the news is grim. The Soviets were advancing their surface-to-air missile technology so rapidly that in all likelihood, within 18 months, they would be able to knock these new planes out of the sky. So damn it. So Bissell, he's like, all right, how do we fix this? He thinks about, using some kind of radar hiding paint on the U-2 planes, but it won't work. Paint's heavy. The U-2 flew so high, partly because of how light it was. The weight of that paint would just drag the aircraft down. So B Dizzle, puts together a group of scientists who could make the CIA some radar absorbing paint. And these scientists, who worked out of Harvard University and MIT Lincoln Laboratory, created it by the winter of 57, and then the U-2 was painted with it. And then by 57, according to the CIA's a study called the CIA's role in the study of UFOs, the U-2s accounted for more than half of all UFO sightings reported in the continental United States. So he hasn't been shut down. They're still flying, at least domestically. And then they try to fly with this new paint in April of 57. Test pilot Robert Seeker, he takes one of the newly painted U-2s up into the skies of Area 51, and it doesn't end well. Suddenly, the anti-radar detection paint they made in that lab causes the plane to overheat, spin out of control, and crash. He's able to eject, but is killed when a piece of the spinning aircraft smashes him in the head. So much for the new paint plan. It's not working. Bissell then decides to stop with U-2 production and design an all-new stealth plane. Just as Richard Bissell begins presenting plans for his radical and ambitious new project to the president, a national security crisis overwhelms the country. October 4th, 1957, the Soviets launched the world's first satellite, a 184-pound silver orb called Sputnik 1. Now, this was the secret that Sergei Korolev had been working on at Area 51's communist doppelganger N1188. The satellite launch meant the Russians now had a rocket with enough propulsion and guidance to hit a target anywhere in the world. So damn it, Bojangles just punched a hole in the wall of the hotel room. Hearing about communist Cold War advances makes him furious. Well, on May 27, 1957, Area 51 is now less focused on stealth planes for the moment, more focused on making very, very big bombs. Or being around this kind of big bomb project of Operation Plum Bob. Operation Plum Bob begins a series of nuclear tests carried out in the Nevada desert that will last until October 7th, and it will be the longest and most controversial series of weapon tests ever carried out in the continental U.S. It consisted of 29 nuclear detonations on U.S. soil. Almost 1,200 pigs were subjected to biomedical experiments and blast effect studies. Seriously, pigs were placed in elevated cages and provided with suits made of different materials in the blast zones to test which materials provided the best protection from thermal radiation. Most of the pigs would survive the initial blasts, but with third-degree burns over 80% of their bodies. Fallout from some of the detonations also killed some livestock grazing just outside the weapons testing facility. On July 5th, 1957, the biggest bomb was dropped. Security guard Richard Mingus, Old Dickie Ming, was at the control point when the hood bomb went off, all 74 kilotons of it. Almost immediately after the bombs detonated, a call came in from Mingus's boss, a man by the name of Sergeant May, said there was a major security problem. The Atomic Energy Commission had forgotten to secure Area 51. Hood was a 74 kiloton bomb, 6 times bigger than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Remains the largest bomb ever exploded on continental U.S. soil. The flash from the Hood bomb visible from Canada to Mexico to 800 miles out to sea. The blast wave hit Area 51 with such force it buckled the metal doors on several of the west-facing buildings. This is just a fucking blast wave. including a maintenance hangar and supply warehouse, radioactive ash buried, the area in just very harmful radiation. Bushes burned, the sand, after being subjected to 5,400 degrees Fahrenheit, fused into little pieces of glass. Between the fallout and the structural damage, Area 51 becomes uninhabitable. After Hood, the once bustling classified facility transforms into a ghost town overnight. Not unlike some little mining towns that had dotted that area a century before. So due to radiation levels, Area 51 is actually completely abandoned until 1959. And then late in the summer of 1959, 50 employees do return to begin work on a new spy plane. Old Dickie Biz had a huge Cold War boner over. In December of 1959, President Eisenhower briefed on the status of the new A-12 spy plane. He writes a $100 million check to Lockheed from his discretionary funds for a fleet of 12 spy planes. The creation of this A-12 fleet is given the code name Oxcart. By January of 1960, Area 51 is now buzzing again as they're producing these A-12s. And the A-12, man, is a badass plane. Revolutionary. Huge leap forward in the evolution of flight. 8,500-foot runway had to be created piece by piece because the A-12 rendered standard Air Force runways just unusable. The Oxcart would fly 5 times as fast as the U-2. 5 times. So the agency needed a lot more restricted airspace as well around Area 51 to test it. It was capable of flying at speeds over 2,200 miles per hour. An Oxcart pilot would actually need a 186-mile swath of land just to make a U-turn over. So an additional 38,400 acres of land around the bases were withdrawn from public access, allowing the Federal Aviation Administration to extend restricted airspace from a 50-square-mile box to a box 440 square miles. With the A-2, the concern continued to be stealth. The radar results from the pole test were promising, but as the Oxcart advanced, so did Soviet countermeasures to shoot it down. 2,200 miles an hour. Man, the flight distance from LA to New York City, 2,451 miles. Domestic flights take about 5 hours flight time to travel that distance. This thing could get you there in a little over an hour. Less time than it takes to actually drive across LA. Much less, actually. 4 new aircraft hangars are built, designated 4, 5, 6, and 7. The former U-2 hangars, whose metal doors had buckled in the atomic blast, converted into maintenance facilities and machine shops. Dickie B, he has a tennis court put in, thinks about having an Olympic-sized swimming pool put in. And then in 1961, the whole Bay of Pigs nuclear fiasco with Cuba happens. And old Dickie B is blamed by President Kennedy for how it's mishandled, and he's out. But testing at Area 51 continues without him. On April 25th, 1962, the Oxcart is ready to fly. It had taken 3 years, 10 months, and 7 days from the time the plane was suggested to the president to the first official flight. And fly it does, man. A total of 2,850 Oxcart flights would be flown out of Area 51 over a period of 6 years. And then in the mid-1960s, sightings of UFOs go up again. Of course they do. They reach unprecedented levels because the A-12, the Oxcart, is being repeatedly mistaken for a UFO all over again. Now, exactly how many of these flights generated UFO reports is not known, but the ones that prompted UFO sightings created the same kinds of problems for the CIA they had in the previous decade with the U-2, only with elements that were seemingly even more inexplicable. You know, most Oxcart sightings came right after sunset, when the lower atmosphere was shadowed in dusk. 17 miles higher up, the sun, though, is still shining brightly on the Oxcart, so it looks like it's glowing. The spy plane's broad titanium wings, coupled with its triangle-shaped rear fuselage, reflects the sun's rays higher in the sky than any aircraft that was, known at the time, was able to fly. And so again, it's going to understandably cause alarm. 20, years into the American jet age in the mid-1960s, fears of unidentified flying objects continued to shape cultural thinking and spawn industries by then millions of Americans did correctly believe that various factions inside the U.S. government were actively engaged in cover-ups regarding UFOs. However, it appears that they were covering up their own technology, not extraterrestrial technology. By May 1963, there were 5 working Oxcarts test flying around Area 51. On May 24th, 1963, a pilot named Ken Collins, codename Iceman, it's a badass nickname, has a failure while on a test mission. He has to eject from his A-12, and the multi-million-dollar plane is destroyed in a crash. Well, local ranchers find Collins walking down the road after witnessing the crash. Until that moment, no civilian without a top security clearance had ever laid eyes on the Oxcart. And then Collins has strict orders to keep it that way. So he'd been briefed over what to do in this kind of situation and give a cover story. And he does. He tells the ranchers that his aircraft was an F-105 fighter jet, had a nuclear weapon on board. And then told him, that this is not good. Basically, that I don't know what's going on with that nuke. And the men just tell him that if he wants to ride, they better jump in quick because they're not staying around, this Wendover area for long. Then they drop him off at a payphone. He had a dime and a scrap of paper with a phone number in his pocket of his flight suit, just in case if this scenario were to happen. So he uses his dime, makes a phone call to his superiors, and tells them the bad news. Then in July 1963, an A-12 pilot, oxcart pilot, becomes the first person to hit Mach 3 speeds over 2,300 miles per hour. In 1964, more nuclear testing occurs around Area 51. Between September 1961 and December 1964, a record-breaking 162 bombs are exploded at the Nevada test site inside underground tunnels and shafts. Nearly half of those explosions result in the accidental release of radioactivity into the atmosphere. Beginning in 1968, thanks to CIA documents remaining classified, what goes on at Area 51 starts to get very murky. President Lyndon B. Big Dick Jumbo Johnson has declared for the A-12 Oxcart project to be terminated as of January 1st, 1968, but supposedly the new man in charge of Area 51, CIA Director Richard Helms, convinces him to use the planes to gather surveillance photos in Vietnam. Now, if that name sounds familiar, we learned about Helms in the Project MK Ultra Suck. He's the guy that ordered the MK Ultra documents to be destroyed in 1973. So he also may have continued this program. They might have just made it seem like it was being discontinued, but not. It's believed by many that the A-12 spy plane program and later versions of it not only continued in the 70s, but continued to this day. Supposedly, once the war on terror began in 2001, after the September 11th attacks, flight testing new drones, new very sophisticated drones, at Area 51 and Area 52, now we're moving full speed ahead. And since the official record ends in 1968, so does today's Timesuck timeline.
Good job, soldier. You made it back. Barely.
So now that we know the major highlights of what we were able to piece together from leaked documents, declassified documents, and interviews from former Area 51 employees, let's suck into the conspiracies that surround Area 51, the unofficial story. But before we do that, a quick word from today's sponsor. Timesuck is brought to you today by Rayard and Mother's Sexy Family Lingerie Boutique. It's the world's first and longest running lingerie store designed specifically for mothers and sons. At Rayard and Mother's Sexy Family Lingerie Boutique, you can help buy lingerie for your mom or have your mom help you buy lingerie for you and your sexy lady. Now, when your lady asks, "How did you know I would like this?" you know what to say. "Mama told me you'd love it." Or if she's offended and says, "What made you think I'd wear this?" you can blame mom. "Sorry, Mama said she thought it would be right up your alley." Rayard and Mother's Sexy Family Lingerie Boutique has body stockings, corsets, garter belts, thigh highs, lace harness teddies, mini dresses, cup bras, schoolgirl outfits, French-made costumes, fishnet tube dresses, and Mama's favorite, crotchless teddies. Order today at Rayard and Mother's Sexy Family Lingerie Boutique.dryheave/I'm sorry, and you'll receive free shipping on your first order and a 50% coupon to their sister store, Rayard and Father's Sexy Family Sex Toy Shop. Free daddy's butt plug on all orders over $100. Rayard's Family Lingerie and Sex Toys, keeping parents overly involved in their adult children's sex lives since 1946. Okay, so let's just all pretend that never happened and move back into Area 51 alien conspiracies. A lot of today's Area 51 conspiracies can be traced back to the claims of one man, Geraldo Rivera. Geraldo Michael Rivera, host of the talk show Geraldo that ran from 87 to 98, he claimed that he went undercover, getting employed at a custodial firm hired to clean Area 51 hangars. He was able to sneak a hidden camera in and capture some grainy footage of what may or may not be extraterrestrial life. I'm kidding. Geraldo did not sneak in Area 51. A former pro wrestler, the Ultimate Warrior, did. No. Most Area 51 conspiracies can be traced back to Robert Scott Lazar. Bobby Scott, Bobino Scottino. But did Bobby Scott even work there? I'm going to tell you his tale, and then you can decide. In May of 1989, this is the story where most of today's Area 51 lore originates. May of 1989, a soft-spoken, bespectacled 30-year-old native Floridian already suspicious to me, from Florida. A lot of kooky shit comes out named Robert Scott Lazar, appears on Eyewitness News in Las Vegas with an investigative reporter named George Knapp and reveals Area 51 secrets to the world at large. Out of the tens of thousands of people who had worked at Area 51 over the years, Lazar was the only individual to break the oath of silence in such a public way. Now, Bob Lazar claims he wound up at Area 51 after getting a job referral from nuclear physicist Dr. Edward Teller. Teller co-invented the world's most powerful weapon of mass destruction, the thermonuclear bomb, tested many incarnations of his diabolical creation just a few miles over the hill from Area 51 in the numbered sectors that make up the Nevada test site. Now, I say claimed because Nellis Air Force Base, who currently administers Area 51, as well as the Los Alamos National Laboratories, another place Lazar claimed to have worked as a scientist, both deny Lazar worked for them. Now, Lazar claims that his records of his employment as a scientist were erased to discredit him. And his in to Area 51, this Dr. Teller, a man who was a noted nuclear physicist, when questioned about Lazar, didn't recall meeting him ever. He did say, I probably met him. I might have said to somebody, I met him and I liked him after I met him, if I liked him, but I don't remember him. To me, that quote sounds like a nice guy, who doesn't want to hurt the feelings of someone he may have met, someone who is claiming to have met him, but who has no idea who this person is. Well, supposedly, in December 1988, Lazar is brought to Area 51 for the first time. According to Lazar, the first day he's at Area 51, he's driven on a bumpy dirt road for approximately 20-30 minutes before arriving at a mysterious complex of hangars built into the side of a mountain, somewhere on the outskirts of this dry, groomed lake bed. Well, Lazar was stationed in a section called S4, he said, and he was processed through a security system far more intense than the one he'd been subjected to a little earlier at Area 51's primary base. So now he's in like the secret part of the secret base. He's in the most secret part of the secret base. He signed one document allowing his home number, telephone number to be monitored, another one to waive his constitutional rights. Then he was shown a flying saucer. Of course he was. And he was told it would be his job to reverse engineer its anti-gravity propulsion system. Out of all the scientists in the world, this guy no one's heard of, Bobby Lazar. He's gonna be the one to do it. Out of everyone, old Bobby Scott, old Bobino Scottino, he's the guy to get her done. And so he told this, and he's told that there are 9 saucers at S4. According to Lazar, over the following winter, he works at S4 mostly during the night for a total of only approximately 10 days. He claimed that the work was intense but sporadic. Sometimes he worked like one night a week. He never told anybody about what he's doing at S4, not even his wife, Tracy, or his best friend, Gene Huff. One night in early March of 1989, Lazar is being escorted down a hallway inside S4 by 2 armed guards when he was ordered to keep his eyes forward. Instead, curiosity seizes Bob Lazar. He glances sideways through a small 9 by 9 inch window, and for a brief moment, he says he saw inside an unmarked room and sees a small gray alien with a large head standing between 2 men dressed in white coats. Okay. So I'm having a lot of problems with this story. And it bothers me that this guy is like heralded in certain UFO kind of, circles. Like he's like the guest of honor at big conventions. It's like, just think about this story for a second. Out of all the scientists that they could possibly find, they find this guy that I'll soon fill you in that basically no one's heard of. And okay, let's say he is heard of. Let's say he is a noted scientist. Why would he be brought in and then just like only like he's immediately like, hey man, your job is to do like the most important shit military wise that anyone's ever done. Figure out how to reverse engineer this anti-gravity system. Figure out how to like have our military flying machines not need gravity. But then we're only going to let you work every once in a while. We're like, you're going to work like one day this week and then another day this week. That doesn't make any fucking sense. Like just give him a normal working schedule. And then also, I love the detail of, okay, we're going to walk you down this hallway. And instead of just fucking blindfolding you, which would be the easiest and obvious thing to do if you don't want somebody to see something, if it's really important for them not to see, I don't know, a fucking alien. Instead, you don't do that. Oh, no. You don't do that. You just tell them, hey, man, direct orders, just eyes ahead. Don't look to the side. That is, that's dumb. Okay, anyway. He says this encounter is a turning point for him. He says something shifted in him, and he felt he could no longer bear the secret of the flying saucers, what was an alien. He felt compelled to share what he'd learned with his wife and his friend, and then he breaks his Area 51 secrecy oath, and then he claims that he knew the schedule for flying saucer test flights being conducted out on Groom Lake, where they had the test range runway, and he suggests to his wife, Tracy, and his buddy Gene, and this other guy named John Lear, who is a committed ufologist and the son of the man who invented the Learjet, Bill Lear. Oh man, I'm sure Bill, before he passed, was super proud of his son becoming a fucking wackadoodle ufologist. Well, Lazar claims that they brought high-powered binoculars and a video camera, waited, and then watched the UFOs fly around. And by the way, I'm not against UFOs. I'm actually a believer in UFOs. I just can't stand some of these stories. Okay, so Lazar's wife and friends, they see what appeared to be a brightly lit saucer rise up from above the mountains that hid the Area 51 base from view. They watch it hover and land. The following Wednesday, they return to the site, and then they make a third visit on April 5th, 1989. This time down a long road leading into the base called the Groom Lake Road, which ended in them being discovered by Area 51 security guards, detained and arrested. And now check this out. And then, he brings his wife and two buddies, into a highly classified base, gets detained, gets arrested. This happens one night on April 5th. And then he says he returns to work the next day, like nothing happened. And then supposedly he's arrested by someone the next day. No, I'm not arrested. Yeah, so he's supposedly arrested the night before, returns to work the next day, quickly released somehow, then just goes back to work on the following morning. This makes zero sense. Like for me, I just call bullshit on the whole story. Like, get the fuck out of here. Really, you take the top secret maximum security clearance aspect out of this story. Just imagine getting arrested by someone who works for your company. Like, imagine for whatever reason you sneak into your company's offices or headquarters one night, and then you get arrested for trespassing. For you're not supposed to be there at that time, at least, or you bring people that aren't supposed to be there. Like just you just break into your company, and then you head back to work the next day, as if nothing happened. When has that ever happened? Ever? Like, as if word of your arrest, when you're caught by another fucking employee, is not going to reach your boss. You know? Like, there's never going to be like, hey, Bob, what are you doing? Well, just heading over to work on the spaceship. Why do you ask? Did you by chance forget that you were arrested last night? Oh, you heard about that? Yeah, Bob, I heard. You were arrested here, Bob. I was talking about it with the head of security in the break room a few minutes ago. We can't believe you showed up. There's not even 100 employees here, Bob. How did you think I wouldn't notice? Okay, and if he would have been arrested, they would have realized, like the night before, that he was an employee when they checked his ID, and they would have taken away his security clearance. I mean, this is supposed to be the most highly secured military base in the United States, and they don't know the dude they just arrested is one of the guys who is assigned the most important task of reverse engineering the UFO anti-gravitational technology. Like, give me a break. But he's sticking to the story. Bob claims he was met by supervisor Dennis Mariani, who informed Lazar that he would not be going out to the Groom Lake that day as planned. Instead, he would be driven to Indian Springs Air Force Base. The guard who caught him the night before helicoptered in from the Area 51 perimeter, confirms that Bob Lazar was one of the four people snooping in the woods the night before, and then he's told he's fired. Yeah, I bet. Hey, Bob, look, you've been really good at figuring out the whole UFO technology, but we were very clear when we hired you to work random days that make no sense, that this is highly classified information. So while it would make more sense to court-martial you and put you in prison for fucking treason, we're going to let you go. We're just going to let you go and hope you don't talk about this on TV. Well, after getting fired, Lazar became convinced he was being followed by government agents, and then he claimed someone shot out his tire when he was driving to the airport. So let me get this straight. So they weren't smart enough to initially realize that the guy they arrested working at the place they were arresting him for trespassing on, they were so unconcerned with this guy when they just let him go after firing him, but now they're shooting his tires out. Okay. Well, fearing for his life, Bob decides to go public with his story, and then Lazar's TV appearance in November of 1999 broke the station's record for viewership, but the original audience is limited to people in the Vegas area. It would take months for Lazar's story to go global. The man responsible for that happening was a Japanese-American mortician living in Los Angeles named Norio Haikawa. Because you know what? Because why not? Why not? Why not introduce a Japanese mortician to this wackadoodle story? Hayakawa hears Lazar's story on a late night radio show airing in Los Angeles. I'm guessing it's probably Art Bell's AM Coast to Coast. Having no television experience, Hayakawa contacts a Japanese magazine called Mu, renowned for its popular stories about UFOs. He'd later say Mu got in touch with me right away and said they were interested, and then Nippon TV was interested as well. Well, in a matter of weeks, Japan's leading TV station had dispatched an 8-man crew from Tokyo to Los Angeles. Hayakawa takes them to Las Vegas to do an interview with Bob Lazar, who convinces them to try and film some of the flying saucer activity at Area 51. So he must not be that concerned about the government following him. Hayakawa asked Lazar if he would take them to the lookout point on Tikaboo Mountain off Highway 375. He does decline. He is a little scared. He tells them exactly where to go, though. And then they say they went to the place and set up their equipment. Lo and behold, just after sundown, a bright orangish light came rising up off the land near Groom Lake. Hayakawa showed the footage to the magazine's bosses in Japan, who were thrilled. The TV station had paid Lazar a little over $5,000 for a 2-hour segment about his experience at Area 51. And then the program is aired on primetime TV in Japan, and 30 million Japanese viewers tune in. And then Lazar's story, after it hits Japanese airwaves, goes worldwide. And then people start scrutinizing his story, looking into his life, and that's not good for Bob's credibility. First off, Lazar claims that he had degrees from MIT and Caltech. Nope. Neither institution has a record of his attendance. Stanton Friedman, prominent ufologist, actual retired nuclear physicist, was able to verify that Lazar took electronics courses in the late 1970s, not at MIT, not at Caltech, but at Pierce Junior College. It's a little different, which is slightly different. It's in LA. And at he took these classes at the same time. He was supposedly attending MIT in Massachusetts. So I don't think there's ever been someone who's simultaneously went to Pierce Junior College and also MIT. He further determined that Lazar had graduated from high school in the bottom third of his class, and that the only science course he took was chemistry. So other ufologists are now calling this guy out. Not a good sign. This Stanton, by the way, open to believing in some pretty extreme stuff. He's not a real skeptic. He's a big believer in the Roswell crash actually being an alien spaceship crash. Now, if you listen to my Alien Extravaganza Suck, you know that I don't believe that. I came to the conclusion that it was in fact a weather balloon. But even Stanton, even the guy who believes in aliens at Roswell, doesn't believe aliens were taken from Roswell to Area 51, which makes no sense, by the way, because Area 51 wasn't a fucking thing until 1955. Roswell happened in 1947. So how was the alien taken to a place that didn't exist yet? Anyway, Stan believes that Lazar graduated in the bottom third of his class, which would certainly exclude him from MIT. MIT usually takes probably the top 1 or 2%. And even out of those, they take people who've taken a lot of science courses. Friedman believes that Lazar lied about attending Caltech. No professors remember Lazar. He was not in any yearbooks. There was no records of him attending. He could not remember the year he even obtained his master's there. He was a member of no professional bodies. And MIT has confirmed there's no way to expunge someone from their records. Numerous other researchers not been able to find any records supporting his claims of having received degrees. Even worse, no researcher can find anyone who claims to have even seen him ever at either place. One man does claim he tracked down a scientist who worked at Los Alamos Laboratories with Bob. Supposedly, this guy, Jeremy Corbell, a documentary filmmaker who I've watched videos of on YouTube. He has several films in the works, one of them with Lazar, about Lazar. He's the man behind the website extraordinarybeliefs.com. And he says that he used some innovative research techniques to find a witness willing to go on record to say that they were working with Bob at, one of the facilities he claims. Little conflict of interest here, though. The dude who makes aliens have landed type documentaries, the man who's trying to sell a film about shit being found at, Area 51 with Bob Lazar, is saying that he magically has proven that Lazar is telling the truth. Very convenient. Corbell says, in researching Lazar's claims, he used software that can run automated tasks over the internet to search Facebook for keywords. His bot found him in a comment in a Facebook group from a man who said his neighbor claimed to have worked with Lazar. And then Corbell got in contact with this man who eventually got him in touch with the neighbor, who turns out to be a legitimate physicist that Corbell was able to confirm did work at Los Alamos Laboratories. Corbell asked the physicist, this man supposedly named Dr. Robert Krangle, if he would be willing to go public with his claims. The guy said yes. And now there's audio, no video, but audio recording of Dr. Krangle confirming he worked with Bob Lazar. But here's the thing. I have Googled every variation of Dr. Robert Krangle I can think of. Dr. Krangle MIT, Dr. Krangle Los Alamos, Dr. Krangle Area 51, just Dr. Krangle, whatever, Robert Krangle, Bob Krangle. I even tried alternate spellings of his last name, Kringle. Nothing. The only shit that comes up is the Corbell audio interview posted in 2015 or articles on various ufology-type websites citing or embedding this one interview. It all just comes back to the same interview every single time. Beyond fishy. Do you understand how rare it is in 2018 to not show up on the web? Just to test this, I Googled my about-to-turn 86-year-old grandfather, Ward Hall, a man who has never posted a single thing online, a man who has literally never owned a computer. He's never had a laptop. He's never had a desktop. He's never had an iPad. He has no internet service at his house. He does have an iPhone that he only knows how to work the weather app on and make phone calls. He doesn't know how to text. He's never had an email address ever. He's never had a social media account. He doesn't even really understand what social media is. He knows I have a podcast, but he doesn't know what a podcast is. The last time we talked, he asked me how my podcast writing job was going. He asked me how the writing was going. Apparently, he thinks I just, email you guys shit every week. And info came up about my grandpa online immediately. Whitepages.com, familytree.com, familytreenow.com, even an obituary reference, which fucking kind of pissed me off. Look, I know he's old, internet, but he's not dead yet, you fucking bloodthirsty jackals. But nothing on Dr. Robert Krangle, supposed important nuclear scientist. If any one of you listeners gave me your last name, your name, company you worked at, title, doctor, if you have one in the school you got a degree from, something would come up every time. Something. I did find a Bob Krangle, an IT specialist living in Dallas, looks to be about 60 years old, and guess what's not on his resume? Anything we're talking about today. Definitely not MIT. He lists his education, which I love, as the School of Hard Knocks. And there's more problems with Bob's credibility. In 1990, Lazar was arrested for aiding and abetting a prostitution ring. This was reduced to felony pandering, to which he pleaded guilty. He was ordered to do 150 hours of community service, stay away from brothels, and ordered to undergo psychotherapy. So he doesn't seem mentally stable. And this supposed scientist was listed as being a self-employed film processor on bankruptcy documents. He doesn't hold up to even being remotely credible. You could do the whole, this is what the government wants you to think. They've erased all his records around. But come on, how do you explain not one person that we can verify as existing, verifying any of his claims? The government is not able in the information age to reach everybody around someone, I don't think. Other lesser-known ufologists have also made Area 51 alien claims. There's claims of that's where the moon landing was faked in the Area 51 facility. Those ones are so ridiculously not credible. They're not even worth sharing. They're 100% complete maniac wackadoodle. There is a recent kind of fun claim of Area 51 alien stuff made by a man supposedly named Robert Miller. Now, Robert claims he was selected to be a pilot in a secret government program at the Area 51 Groom Lake facility. And when he arrived on his first day for work in the middle of the night, he was met by the men in black. He was soon informed he'd be a test pilot on a new aircraft reverse engineered from an alien craft that crashed in 1947. Of course, the Roswell saucer. In a 2017, I would say interview, but I guess it's more of like a fucking wackadoodle TED Talk. It's just a video of him with a weird spacey backdrop and the worst sound ever. If you think today's episode sounds bad, it is, however it comes out, it's a million times better than the sound quality of this thing. It's this weird, shitty green screen space backdrop. And he says, I do remember they brought me inside the craft and up to the pilot seat. There was only room for one person in the giant craft. I looked around the cockpit and only saw a seat, no joystick, no steering wheel, no other controls. There was, however, a helmet that I guess conveniently fit a human being. They told me the craft was controlled telepathically. I was told to imagine the craft starting to float off the ground, but it didn't work. Instead, I had to imagine that I was the craft, like part of it. And I began thinking to myself floating off the ground, and I felt the vibrations. I was 500 feet off the ground. Then the vibrations of the engine stopped. There was no ejection button on the craft. I was effectively helpless. It was plunging towards the ground, and I went unconscious. The next thing I knew, I was in the hospital. A man in a black suit came in and explained to me what had happened. He said right before the craft hit the ground, it just went boom, disappeared. Then he said the man in black told him this. Then in the middle of the night, They heard a loud crashing noise outside. The craft had crashed in the same spot. The scientists had hypothesized that the craft had time traveled. Man, oh, Robert is really making me want to do some LSD right now. Like, man, what a fun trip he went on. Sounds amazing. What an adventure. Men in Black are talking to him. Of course he did. If you're a new listener, we just did a suck on the Men in Black. And Men in Black lore doesn't hold up very well under scrutiny. So who is this Robert Miller character? Well, out of all the qualified pilots in the United States, why was he chosen to fly a flying saucer? Well, you can watch the video if you want, where he discloses all of his secrets on YouTube. I'm going to put a link in today's episode description because it is very entertaining. Miller claims he was selected to be a pilot in the secret government program at Area 51. He said his father worked at Area 51. He said his dad was an aerospace engineer and that he grew up in a small southern Nevada town while his dad worked at the base. There's no record of this that I can find anywhere online. Said his dad worked late hours and could never tell the family what he did for his job. Says his dad taught him to fly at an early age and that he was a licensed pilot at 15. Says he went to the Marine Corps as a pilot. And then, his own quotes, he says he became one of the top pilots in the Marines, And then at age 28, even though he's a top pilot, he decides to leave the Corps, but then gets a letter that says classified, addressed to him, and finds out he's been chosen to be a test pilot at the Groom Lake Test Facility, a.k.a. Area 51. Then he talks about being taken to the base in the middle of the night, about meeting the Men in Black, who take him deep underground inside the base, lock him in a tiny room. They lock him in a tiny room with a desk, a bed, and some weights for exercise. Well, that's thoughtful. And then they tell him he'll be living there for 2 months. And then they lock him in. And then he reads a manual on the desk that says a bunch of shit about Area 51, including that the only way to get one of the 1,200 classified positions on the base is to be recommended by an insider. So he assumes his now retired dad must have, given him a reference, which makes no sense. You're just going to invite your son to be locked into an underground room. Then he gets into stuff I already told you about with the flying saucer, the stuff he'd said earlier. Well, just like Dr. Robert Krangle earlier, I can't find shit online about this guy. About this top Marine Corps pilot, Robert Miller, other than this one video. And just visually, he does not pass the smell test for me. I watch this guy, and I would not buy anything this guy's selling. He reminds me of 1,000 other bullshit artists I've met before. Some dude desperate for attention. I've had the privilege of meeting a lot of active and former military, and he doesn't remind me of any of them. He does remind me of a lot of wannabes who, share a bunch of weird war stories that they're just fucking made up. That they were never in the service. He doesn't seem to be even remotely credible to me. I wouldn't buy a car or life insurance from him. I wouldn't give him a ride if I saw him hitchhiking. If he started talking to me at a bar, I'd pretend to get a phone call and just to get the hell away from him. He looks like the kind of guy who would knock on your door and then try to sell you some fucking weird vitamins or some shit. When my kids were younger, there was no way I would leave them at a daycare if he was working there. He actually reminds me of an older version of the dude I based my pathological liar stand-up bit on, the Rick bit, years ago. That slap a salmon, punch a bear. Easy, Robert Miller, easy. But that's just what I think. There's a lot of comments under his interview video that has almost 1 million views, and most of them disagree with me. And let's find out what the idiots of the internet think about Robert Miller.
Idiots of the internet.
And again, I do apologize for the sound quality and my voice. Just nothing I can do. So hopefully I'm intelligible today. Under Robert's video, one of the first to post is Gabriel Soto. He posted something that I was thinking. He says, they teach you how to use an alien spaceship a day before you use it. Okay, very believable. That's one of his claims. He gets taken there one day, very next day, they're putting the helmet on and letting him fly it with mind control. Appreciate the sarcasm, Gabriel. Noted and enjoyed. Well, excuse me, I can't get my throat to clear. User Hindu Kush doesn't appreciate it and posts, because they don't want any bullshit. Are you fucking stupid? Not everyone's brain works the same. No, Hindu Kush, Gabriel Soto isn't stupid. He's logical. You, on the other hand, first impression is that you're a real dum-dum. Right? What are you talking? No, it doesn't make any sense what they're saying. Well, Mooney's Urban Farm also doesn't like Gabriel's logic. He posts Gabriel Soto. That would be standard procedure for the highest security clearance. Remember, he was not just one of the best. He was one of the best. Fly at early age pilot by 15 and in the Marine Corps. Best of the best. So he says, Urban Farm. No evidence of that. Do you just accept everything that people say at face value? Man, you are a salesman's dream. Just Mooney, I want you to take a look at this Aquamarine 1993 Geo Metro hatchback. Stick shift, no frills. Sure, it has over 350,000 miles on it, and if someone rear ends you, you may explode. However, it is the fastest car on the market, barely street legal. It'll do 500 miles an hour in second gear. Michael Jordan was the original owner before he sold it to Tom Brady, before he sold it to Wiz Khalifa, who shared it with Kanye West. It's valued at $3 million, but I'm going to let you have it for 50 G's. It is the best of the best of the best, wrapped in a blanket of best, stuck in a best hole, and then eaten by a best monster. Let's sign some paperwork. How do you know what standard operating procedure would be? Vegas odds put you at a greater chance of living in your mom's basement than having top level of security clearance, some top level. There's no way you know what you're talking about. Spence Remix also does not care for Gabriel's logic. He posts, Gabriel Soto, there is not much to it, LOL. Put a helmet on and think, that's it. What's so hard about that? Some people are just ignorant. Yeah, some people are like you. Spence Remix, you fucking ignorant. Oh my God. I love it's easy. You just put a helmet on and think. The Men in Black were very clear about that. Okay, well, that's true. Then why go through the trouble of bringing in some off-base pilot, you dumb shit? They have a base full of people capable of flying the most sophisticated spy planes in the world. Think about the A-12. We're talking about, people already operating out of Area 51. If you just put the helmet on and think, well, why didn't one of those guys do it? You need a helmet that you can put on that allows you to critically think for the first time in your entire life. Please, I gotta hope you're a kid. Please don't be a grown-up who has kids and is raising them to be like you and who is voting and stuff. And then after, about 15 more people just pile on and make fun of Gabriel for being logical because this part of the internet has become a giant pile of virtual turds. Then, this is awesome. A wackadoodle gibberish battle breaks out in the thread between VO Vortex and Cy Avabel. I love it. I love it when people argue over something that no one can prove, like get into a heated debate, and when both people act as if what they know is common knowledge and it's complete gibberish. Vortex starts by posting, actually, there are many dimensions, others further, are time, not space as hypothesized. It's very hard to read because of the weird sentence structure. It is impossible for a third dimensional character such as us to view a fourth dimensional character and etc. If the Roswell activity did happen and they were from another dimension, the universe as we now will cease to exist. Incredible. Complete and utter insanity presented as fact. Hello, dimensions are further, people. They're further, whatever that means. You can't be third dimensional and talk to fourth dimensional characters. Our universe would delete itself. Well, Cy Avabel doesn't agree with Vortex's mumbo jumbo and posts, VO Vortex, hey man, all Eileens aren't 4D. I think he means aliens. Hey man, all aliens aren't 4D. Some use 4D device to control it. And the Roswell Eileen group made exchange with our government for copper. Copper's so important for aliens. But we can't normally see 3D aliens, Eileens, because they use telekinesis and appear as humans for our eyes. I love the attitude. Hey man. Hey look, bro. Aliens need copper. Can we at least agree on that? I mean, we do all know that aliens love copper. That's 101 alien shit, man. Copper, of course. But they're not all 4D. You have to see that. Some use a 4D device. Here, come on. Just read this barely legible 500-page manifesto that I wrote during my last meth binge. VO Vortex comes back with an even greater level of madness. Saying, Cy Avabel, hi. I wanted to remind you that I love the logic some people have. Hi, I wanted to remind you that it is physically impossible for aliens to have faces because they did not evolve on Earth. What in the fuck are these people talking about? I wanted to remind you, like as if they've talked about this before, and he's tired of him not remembered. Dude, we've talked about this so many times. Aliens don't have faces. He says, our DNA is stimulated to support our habitat and our star. If you bring an alien onto Earth, its DNA could be similar or completely different. That doesn't really make a good case. Listen, buddy, if you bring an alien here, yeah, this could work or not could work. It could be anything. He says, there is a fish with a transparent head here on Earth. Its DNA is about 25% difference than ours is DNA. If aliens came to Earth, we would not stand a chance at all. If they have the amount of intelligence to create a spaceship that can leave its home solar system and get to ours in a matter of time, we can be enslaved right now. I love that, like, they don't follow the point that the person previous to them made. They just have, like, preloaded wackadoodle thoughts that they've been thinking about in the seclusion of their bedroom or basement or attic or fucking cage. I don't know where these people live, but they've just been mulling this shit over in their poorly functioning brains, just over and over, and then they just wait for like kind of an in to throw it. Like he's been thinking about the no faces shit for years, and then it doesn't really pertain to this conversation like at all. And then he acts as if it does. Hey man, remember about the faces thing? No one remembers because no one has ever talked about that other than you. I love that these two clowns really appear to be serious about this shit. Listen, Sai, before we go further down the wrong path, let me remind you, for starters, that aliens don't have faces. Yes, of course they need copper. I know that. You didn't even have to say that. That's insulting. You had to remind me. Look, I didn't just beam down from a spaceship yesterday. However, they can't have faces. So, I mean, if you think about it that way, we could be enslaved any day. Well, Sai Avabel finds Vortex's logic laughable, which would make me like him if he wasn't equally full of shit. He posts, VO Vortex, LOL. So you assume anything not on Earth don't have faces. Actually, Eileens are the one made us. And currently, there are about 14 Eileens groups on Earth. Not all Eileens are bad or good. Every group have their own needs. Example, Greg's. They lost reproduce system, cause of radiation. And they here for our DNA, since it's somewhat matched them, Greys, our hostile race. And there are other races who protect us, but as you said, we can't see Eileens. They just appear humans to our eyes because of telesness power, which makes brain see them as they want. Bro, aliens made us. They made us. Come on, man. There's 14 different kinds. They all have faces, kind of. They have telekinesis faces onto themselves for mating DNA. Please read the 800-page blog post I wrote when I was involuntarily committed to a mental health facility. And then these jackasses just keep at it. And both of them need to stop watching alien videos. And they need to start watching TED Talks. They need to take some online courses just from any place. Any place that is somewhat legitimate institution of learning. Nitin Sony posts, he's definitely truth. I feel because of body language, and I don't know why. Okay. God, man, these people, I bet you most of these people can fucking vote. Oh my God, think about this person, how their brain works. No evidence needed. No need to look at any of the claims. No need to Google, search, any of the credibility of any of this stuff. He has the right body language. So, everything he says has to be true. For a second, I thought user Mandoon was not a moron, but then I made it to the end of his post and I realized I was sadly mistaken. He posts, he's so full of shit. You can tell he's fake. He even say it create wormholes, which allow you to travel near the speed of light. Surely it would allow you to travel faster. Absolute rubbish. So much nonsense. So many arrogant fools who shit on each other for believing in nonsense, then reveal that their truth is equally unverifiable nonsense. Just a cacophony of absurdity, right? This guy's full of shit, man. Clearly, UFOs fly faster than the speed of light. I mean, come on. I mean, they fucking need copper. They use the copper to fly faster than the speed of light, and that's why they don't have faces. Everybody knows this. Okay, one more. User T-Mac lets me exit the thread on a nice laugh. He posts, his story isn't bullshit, and it's given me the courage to tell my story. In 1996, I tried mushrooms. I also saw some crazy shit. That's all I can remember. Oh, perfect, T-Mac. Well done, sir. Well done. I feel like you and I would get along beautifully. And that is all I have for this week's very entertaining, in my opinion, Idiots of the internet.
Idiots of the internet.
All right. So what's going on at Area 51, man? Who the hell knows? It's top secret, and it should be. Our government, keeping secrets does not bother me one bit. It's a scary world. Talk to somebody who's been to Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. I've talked to tons of soldiers and former soldiers, and also a fair amount of immigrants from the Middle East during my travels. I talked to Lindsay and I actually had a great conversation with an Uber driver a while back, him and his family just moved from Iraq a few years ago, and it was interesting. He had a very interesting immigration stance. He was like, we gotta fucking not let too many people in. He just talked about life being hell because of all the terrorism and all the chaos in the country he lived in. I've talked to Africans from various war-torn African nations, talked to people from unstable Eastern European nations. I've read too many articles, watched too many interviews and documentaries from horrible living condition situations in Asia, South and Central America. There are some truly terrible governments out there. Nations run by some really bad people, far worse than anything we deal with in America today, far worse. And it is in our best interest to weapon up and protect ourselves from the future possibility of some insane foreign regime trying to take what we have here. And to stay ahead of the enemy, you got to hide what you're working on. Revealing it is like playing poker and always showing the entire table your hand every time you make a bet. Try winning the World Series of poker that way. It's a little harder to bluff if everyone else knows you have a king and a two of spades, and then the flop is ace, two, and three of diamonds. Or actually better, I guess, ace, three, and five of diamonds. It's like is the government working on a secret weapon system now? Possibly. If they're not working on them in Area 51, I hope they're working on them somewhere, because you can bet your ass some other countries are working on their secret weapons programs. Are there aliens and UFOs and men in black at Area 51? I mean, maybe, yeah, sure. I mean, maybe in the sense that I've never been there and I don't have access to the highest levels of classified documentation, so I can't say for certain, but I do not believe any of the current claims that there is. Everything I've looked into has been terrible, at least to me personally. So let's review the claims I've laid out today and actually look into one more interesting one in today's Top 5 Takeaways.
Timesuck Top 5 Takeaways.
Number 1, Area 51 is created in 1955 in the middle of the Nevada desert. In addition to the Nevada test and training range where nuclear testing would start being carried out in the 1950s, it's created to develop and test spy planes. Number 2, when the U-2 spy planes are flown for the first time in 1955, UFO sightings explode in the area around the base, which makes sense. The plane can fly up to 70,000 feet when most civilian aircraft is flying around 12,000 feet, when the nation's best declassified military planes are maxing out around 40,000 feet. To most eyes, the U-2 truly was an unidentified flying object. Number 3, the development of Area 51 was created in the wake of the Atomic Energy Act of 1946, which itself was created in the wake of the Manhattan Project. And it was this act that gave birth to the concept of born classified missions such as those carried out in Area 51. Missions and projects classified from the second they're created, allowing scientists to create new weapons, technology, etc. without any governmental committee approval, any oversight. So who the hell knows what's been created recently? The possibilities are almost endless. Number 4, most Area 51 lore can be traced back to the testimony of one man, one wackadoodle, Robert Scott Lazar. He seems about as credible as Charles Manson to me. Number 5, the highest profile, this is some new info, the highest profile Area 51 alien eyewitness testimony in recent years actually comes from former Blink-182 frontman Tom DeLonge, current lead vocalist of Angels and Airwaves. He sold over 50 million albums worldwide with just Blink-182. He sold over 1 million records and gotten tens of millions of streams with his new band. Super successful, highly talented, I don't know where that come from, highly talented musician, and really into UFOs. We did talk about some of his UFO beliefs in the Alien Extravaganza bonus episode back in, early 2017. Well, he claims to have camped for a few nights out in the Nevada desert, close to Area 51, as close as he felt he could, get without actually being arrested. I believe back in 2014. The articles I read were interviews from 2015, and in those he refers to have taken his trip, quote, a little while ago. And he says, in numerous interviews, he says, we had 2 nights. We did one outside of a secret base called China Lake, and that was on the flight path to Area 51, which is known as Groom Lake. We camped out at the northern end of that, about 200 miles from the nearest staff location. We were above an area called Tonopah, which is where they test fly a lot of different things. So if you remember, I was talking about a person that was gathering all the footage for the congressional hearing. The person was telling me that the big belief, which I had corroborated by a university professor that was in the know, by the way, that the communication of this particular phenomenon is the frequency of thought. So part of communicating and making contact is shutting your mind down and being able to project your thoughts. And this guy was telling me about it and this whole protocol for how it works. When we went out there the first night, we decided to run through this protocol where you project your thoughts. So we decided to do it, and we were up mad late, but nothing happened. I kept telling the guys, if anything was going to happen, it would happen at 3 a.m, because that's the time when things like that happen. Don't ask me why. We put about 4 logs on the fire, and everything is illuminated by the fire. We fell asleep around 1 or 2. I woke up around 3 a.m. Even right there, it's like, wait a minute. You know that something's crazy going to happen at 3 a.m.? You go out there for the sole purpose of doing that, and you can't fucking stay awake? Okay, but anyway, he says, my whole body felt like it had static electricity, and I opened my eyes and the fire was still going. And there's a conversation going on outside the tent. It sounded like there were about 20 people there talking. And instantly my mind goes, okay, they're at our campsite. They're not here to hurt us. They're talking about shit, but I can't make out what they're saying. But they're working on something. Then I close my eyes and wake up, and the fire is out, and I have lost about 3 hours of lost time. Yeah, because you were fucking asleep, you lunatic. And he says, I get everyone up first thing in the morning and go, did anybody hear all the chatter last night? I couldn't move my body. I was stuck there. I couldn't hear anything. Sleep paralysis, maybe. And then one of the guys I was with goes, yes, they were all around our tent. They were talking. I told you. And the other guy slept right through it. He had no idea what we were talking about. I would love it if that other guy that had no idea was talking in his sleep. And he said, it sounded like English, but you couldn't make out any of the words. Talking in his sleep. You knew you weren't threatened. You couldn't move your body, but you were very aware of the conversation going on for a period of time. Okay, and that's his story. He also, to add context to his frame of mind in 2015, gave several interviews about how he was afraid for his life at this time. Thought that some secret government agency was going to try to snuff him out back in 2015. In another interview, he states, one time I remember bringing up a very specific craft that I believe we're building in secret to emulate the phenomena that our government has been observing for decades. So I started talking about the craft and its magnetic slide system and how it displaces over 89% of the mass of the ship, how it ionizes the engine, how it glows. I went through the whole thing, and this engineer looks at me. This guy is 70 years old, and he goes, you better be real fucking careful about what you're talking about. And I go, okay, so I'm close. And he goes, I'm not fucking kidding with you. You better be really fucking careful. And he calls me up the next day, and he goes, I've had calls about you. If someone comes and asks you to get in their car, don't fucking get in that car. Well, it's 2018, and he's still talking about this shit, and no one's got him. Just like all the people who make these type of claims, he hasn't died a mysterious death. So, very skeptical. Skeptical? What is wrong? Skeptical of his claims. And again, I find myself right now really wishing that I had time to enjoy dropping some quality LSD. Right? Dropping some acid and seeing and feeling the kind of shit Tom is talking about.
Timesuck Top 5 Takeaways.
All right, so Area 51 has been sucked. Thank you, Space Lizard Patreon supporters, for picking a fun episode, for voting that one in to kick off August. You know I love some good wackadoodle shit. It's very entertaining. I like to mix that in with the dark stuff. It makes me laugh very hard. And it was fun to learn about the official narrative regarding the history of, the secret Cold War weapons, kind of development. Being carried out in the Nevada desert. Big thanks to the Timesuck team once again. The High Priest is the Suck, Hardy, Harmony Velicamp, Jesse, Guardian of Grammar, Dobner. We've settled on his nickname now. He likes it. Thanks also to the Reverend Dr. Joe Paisley for doing his best to clean up the sound, back at the Suck Dungeon. Hopefully when I'll hear it for the first time when you guys do. After he cleans it up, I'll be on a flight home. And hopefully this Holiday Inn Express recorded episode sounds a little better than it sounds to me now. Thanks also to Timesuck High Priest Alex Dugan, the Bit Elixir team, Danger Brain, Eric Radiker, Queen of the Suck, Lindsay Cummins. Special thanks again to OG Bojangles Research Department intern. I guess not intern. Research Department, helper outer. Heather Knowledge Ninja Rylander for helping shape this suck. And a week from today, it's the 100th episode, man. 100 straight episodes of the Suck. 100 straight weeks. I'm going to celebrate with the Drunk as Fuck Suck on the Axeman of New Orleans. And some Coeur d'Alene time suckers, the wonderful owners of 10-6, the new New Orleans-inspired cuisine, a little restaurant made on, it's on 4th Street, less than 2 miles from the Suck Dungeon. Man, they're going to be catering the evening's festivities. Lindsay and Joe are going to join me for the recording, which we're doing before I head out to Palm Beach on the evening of Wednesday, the 8th. I'm sure my sponsors, for this episode are going to be thrilled that I'm drunk. So the Axeman, man, who was he? Well, I really don't know much yet. I haven't really started the research, but here's a little what I found. By August of 1918, the city of New Orleans, paralyzed by fear, in the dead of night, the Axeman of New Orleans broke into a series of Italian groceries, attacking the grocers and their families. Some he left wounded, 4 people he left dead. The attacks were vicious. Joseph Maggio, for example, had his skull fractured with his own axe, his throat cut with his razor. His wife, Catherine, had her throat cut. She asphyxiated on her own blood as she bled out. The Axemen struck households in New Orleans from 1917 to March 1919. Then the killer crossed the Mississippi River to the neighboring town of Gretna. On the night of March 9, he assaulted Charlie Cortamilia in a similar fashion, badly injuring Charlie and his wife, Rosie, killing their 2-year-old daughter. Man, he sent in a crazy letter to the press that started off with Hell, March 13, 1919. Esteemed mortal of New Orleans, they have never caught me and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleanians and your foolish police call the Axeman. And to learn anything more about him, at least from me, you're going to have to tune in to next week's wild card of an episode. Right now, it's time for some Timesucker updates.
Updates? Get your Timesucker updates.
Oh, shit. I got a lot of you on Friday with the lie about the dog fucking. Makes me very happy. So many messages have come in. Several Timesuckers who came to the Tampa shows told me that I got them as well. I even got Heather Rylander, who did the initial werewolf research. She wrote in with a subject line of, oh, fuck everything. And then she said, I did the research for werewolves, and I fucking fell for the cave painting dog sex. I was sitting on my couch thinking, how the fuck did I miss that in the hours I was on fucked up werewolf sites? You done got me good, Cummins. Heather. Well, Heather, if it makes you feel better, you're not alone. I also got Alabama sucker Zachary Williams, amongst others. He wrote in saying, I finished listening to the werewolf bonus sucker on my way home from working in the emergency room. After a long and exhausting shift filled with weird patients and strange circumstances, I guess my brain thought, sure, people are weird. I bet a few of them fucked wolves. And why wouldn't we be scared of the offspring? That's horrifying. I guess it's fitting that you finally caught me completely on the last regular bonus suck. Oh, I love it, Zachary. Oh, and there is at least one more bonus suck coming. Friday, September 14th. I didn't feel right just suddenly stopping with no warning. So one more. And then, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe someday life will change in a way that makes it feasible again. I got an aggressive and nice message and shout out request from sweet sucker Ashley Knowlton. She writes, Dan, you goddamn motherfucker. My husband continually says, quote, what is big deal? What is big deal? What is big deal? I finally got him to stop, and now at least 3 times a day, he Michael motherfucking McDonald's me. I can't take any more Triple M. We do love your podcast. Our 1-year anniversary, wedding anniversary is coming up. So can you please give him a shout out and ask him to stop? His name is Curtis. Love your podcast. Glad my husband happened upon it and got me into it as well. I love it. I love when you fuck up your pronunciation. Well, that's good. I can't help it. Hard as I try. And your hilarious jokes and your character voices keep on sucking. Hail Bojangles, which is also the name of our dog who came from the pound with the name. But we always called him Bojangles before we stumbled upon your podcast. Happy coincidence. It was meant to be. Oh, I love that you have a Bojangles. Sincerely, Ashley. Well, happy anniversary, Ashley and Curtis. Happy anniversary. Keep sucking together. And I am sorry about the Michael McDonald. I know it's annoying. It comes from a good place. I'm sure Curtis, just like me with the McDonald, and he's probably just always thinking, just, how do I please you? 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 Girl in your one-way heart. Girl in your one-track mind. How do I please you? How do I please you? Oh, when I say that you're the only one, I'm not trying to fool you, baby. That's a hard one, man. If that's what it takes, I don't need to know anymore. That's a tough one to do without music. Okay. I tried. And finally, fun werewolf update from sucker Damien Bushiman. I kind of just sped through your last name because it's a fucking tricky one. He says, hey, Dan. I have an interesting werewolf story to share, but wanted to say that I understand about the bonus episodes. Thank you for keeping them up for so long. Well, thank you. That's nice. I do hope that you keep up a similar cadence with the subjects. Bonus episodes tend to be more irreverent and fun, I've noticed. You know what? I will. I like the break from killers and hardcore history. You know what? Absolutely. I do curate. I mean, I know the Space Lizards pick some, but I definitely balance out based on what they pick to keep it from falling into a rut. I do my best. Anyways, I posted this on the Facebook page, but this is a lesser known but cool werewolf story. It involves Thais of Kaltenbrunn, a man known as God's werewolf. In 1692, at the age of 80, he went on trial accused of being a werewolf, but instead of claiming that he got his powers from the devil, he stated he got them directly from God. Every year he would transform and venture into hell itself to do battle with the coven of satanic witches that would steal grain and livestock from good Christians. He would slaughter them on behalf of God and return the missing items before they were missed. In fact, he claimed that there was a small army of werewolves called the Hounds of God that fought evil secretly. Amazingly, he was not killed and simply flogged and banished for perversions of Christianity. How has this not been made into a movie? Oh, yeah, incredible. And you know what? And if he was like 80 and really survived a medieval flogging, maybe he really did have some werewolf blood. That's a tough son of a bitch right there. God's werewolf fighting witches in hell. You're right. How has that not been made into at least a video game? Somebody get to it. Thanks for all your messages, everybody. Always appreciate your Timesucker updates.
Thanks, time suckers. I needed that.
We all did.
Well, that's all for this week, unless you're a space lizard. Talk to you Thursday if you are. We've added time codes to the Secret Suck going forward, by the way. So if you don't like one of the segments, well, now you know where to skip to. Skip to the next segment, a la carte it, baby. Pick and choose. Have a great week. Maybe don't buy anything from a salesman claiming he was an Area 51 spaceship pilot. And keep on sucking.